My beloved brothers and sisters, one of the most painful things in life is watching someone walk away when you wanted them to stay forever. The heartbreak, the confusion, the sleepless nights, it can make you question Sometimes we become so attached to people that we forget Allah knows every hidden danger, every future pain, and every spiritual harm they may bring into our lives. A closed door can hurt deeply, but it may also be the very thing that saves your soul, protects your heart, and brings you closer to Allah in ways you never imagined. One of the hardest things for the human heart to accept is losing people we never imagined living without. Sometimes someone becomes such a huge part of your daily life that you cannot picture your future without them. You build emotional attachment, memories, dreams, and hopes around that person. You trust them deeply. You care for them sincerely. And then suddenly, things change. The relationship ends, the friendship fades, or the person walks away completely. In those moments, the pain can feel unbearable. A person begins questioning everything. They replay conversations in their mind, wonder what went wrong, and struggle to understand why Allah allowed the separation to happen. But many times, what feels like heartbreak is actually protection hidden behind pain. Human beings become attached to what they can see in the present moment, but Allah sees the future as clearly as the present. Allah knows what certain people carry inside their hearts. He knows the hidden intentions, the future consequences, and the emotional or spiritual damage that may come later. What we often call rejection can sometimes be Allah saving us from a deeper destruction we cannot yet see. There are people, everyone who cried for months over losing someone, only to later realize that person would have brought immense pain into their lives. Sometimes Allah removes people because they were slowly damaging your heart, your peace, your faith, or your connection with Him. At first, you only see the loss. You do not yet see the mercy hidden inside it. This is why believers must learn to trust Allah even when life does not make sense emotionally. One of the biggest problems people face today is becoming emotionally dependent on human beings more than they depend on Allah. They place all their happiness, peace, and emotional stability into one person. Slowly, that relationship becomes the center of their world. Their mood depends on that person. Their self-worth depends on that person. Their peace depends on that person. But human beings were never meant to carry that role completely. Only Allah is constant. Only Allah can fully hold the weight of the human heart without disappointing it. When people place too much emotional dependence on creation, losing that creation can feel like the end of the world. This is why Allah sometimes removes certain people from our lives to teach us a deeper lesson. Our heart was always supposed to belong to Allah first. There are relationships that slowly pull a person away from Allah without them even realizing it. Sometimes a person becomes so emotionally attached that they begin compromising their values, neglecting prayer, ignoring spiritual growth, or becoming consumed by unhealthy emotions. They may think the relationship is bringing happiness, while spiritually it is weakening them inside. Allah sees this even when they cannot. And because Allah loves His servants, He sometimes removes what is harming them spiritually, even if they cry over losing it. Just like a doctor may remove something harmful from the body to save a person's life, Allah may remove certain people from your life to protect your soul. The process hurts, but the wisdom behind it is deeper than the pain itself. There are also moments when Allah removes people because they were never meant to continue the journey with you forever. Not every person who enters your life is meant to stay permanently. Some people are lessons. Some are temporary tests. Some are blessings for a season, and some are warnings disguised as comfort. Human beings often struggle with this because they become attached to permanence in a temporary world. This dunya changes constantly. People change. Feelings change. Situations change. And while love and companionship are beautiful parts of life, believers must remember that ultimate attachment belongs to Allah alone. Everything else in this world can change in an instant. Sometimes a person keeps begging Allah to keep someone in their life while Allah, in His mercy, is removing them for protection. The believer may not understand it immediately. They may spend nights crying, feeling abandoned, and questioning why things fell apart. But years later, they often look back and thank Allah for what once broke their heart. There are countless people who can now say, at the time I thought losing them would destroy me, but now I realize Allah was saving me. This is because Allah sees the conversations you never heard, the intentions you never noticed, and the future consequences you could never predict. Human beings judge based on emotions and appearances, but Allah's wisdom is complete. Sometimes Allah removes someone because staying attached to them would have distracted you from your purpose, your growth, or your relationship with Him. There are people whose entire lives changed spiritually after heartbreak. They became closer to Allah, more sincere in prayer, more emotionally mature, and more aware of what truly matters in life. The very pain they wanted to escape became the reason they found Allah again. This does not mean the pain is easy. Losing someone you love can feel like grieving a part of yourself. Certain memories hurt. Certain places remind you of them. You may feel lonely, emotionally exhausted, or deeply disappointed. Even the strongest people struggle after heartbreak. But believers must remember that healing does not mean pretending the pain never existed. Healing means trusting Allah through the pain. And one of the most beautiful things about Allah's mercy is that He never removes something without wisdom. If Allah closes one door, it is because He knows what lies behind it. Sometimes He is protecting you from future betrayal. Sometimes He is protecting your faith. Sometimes He is making space for something healthier and more beneficial. And sometimes He is teaching your heart not to become too attached to temporary things. There are people who became emotionally destroyed because they built their entire identity around another person. When that relationship ended, they no longer knew who they were. But when Allah becomes the center of your heart, no loss can completely destroy you. You still feel pain, but your foundation remains strong because your ultimate dependence is on Allah, not creation. This is why closeness to Allah is so important during heartbreak. Many people either become closer to Allah through pain or further away from Him. Some allow heartbreak to make them bitter, angry, and hopeless. Others allow it to soften their hearts and bring them back to Allah sincerely. Pain has the power to transform people spiritually depending on how they respond to it. Sometimes Allah removes people because He knows they would have damaged your future in ways you cannot yet understand. A person may appear loving now, but may eventually bring chaos, emotional harm, or spiritual destruction later. Allah sees what human beings cannot see. This is why trust in Allah's wisdom is essential, especially during painful endings. The believer slowly learns that not every closed door is a punishment. Sometimes it is divine protection. Sometimes Allah is answering your dua in a way you do not yet understand. Sometimes the thing you are crying over today is the very thing you will thank Allah for removing tomorrow. And perhaps one of the greatest lessons in losing people is realizing that no human being was ever meant to replace Allah in your heart. People can love you, support you, and walk beside you, but they can never become the source of your peace completely. Real peace begins when the heart depends on Allah above everything else. Because sometimes Allah removes certain people not to break you, but to save you from becoming spiritually lost, emotionally destroyed, or attached to something that would have harmed your soul far more than the temporary pain of letting go ever could. One of the most difficult things for people to understand is that not every ending in life is meant to destroy them. Sometimes a goodbye feels so painful that the heart immediately assumes something terrible has happened. A relationship ends, a friendship changes, someone walks away, or a connection suddenly breaks apart and the person feels emotionally shattered. They begin asking questions they cannot answer. Why did this happen? Why did Allah allow this? Why did someone I cared about leave my life? In those moments, the pain feels personal and heavy. But what many people fail to realize is that some endings are actually acts of Allah's mercy. Human beings naturally become attached very quickly. When someone gives them attention, love, comfort, or emotional connection, they begin imagining a permanent future with that person. They build dreams around them. They create expectations. And sometimes they become so emotionally invested that they stop seeing things clearly. Emotions can blind people. They only focus on what they feel in the moment, while Allah sees everything hidden beneath the surface. This is why believers must understand something important. Allah can see Dan, or we do. He sees what certain people carry in their hearts. He knows what will happen months or years later. He knows which relationships will bring peace and which ones will slowly destroy the soul. And because Allah is merciful, He sometimes removes people from our lives before the damage becomes greater. At first, this removal hurts deeply because the human heart struggles to let go of what it loves. A person may spend nights crying over someone who left. They replay old memories in their mind. They wonder what they could have done differently. Sometimes they even beg Allah to bring that person back. But later in life, many people realize that what felt like punishment was actually protection. There are people who once cried over losing someone and now thank Allah every single day that the relationship ended. Why? Because with time, the truth became clear. The person they loved may have carried dishonesty, manipulation, emotional harm, or spiritual damage they could not see before. Sometimes Allah removes people quietly because keeping them in your life would have destroyed your peace, your future, or your relationship with Him. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that every emotional attachment is automatically good for them. Just because you love someone does not mean they are healthy for your heart or your soul. Sometimes emotions become stronger than wisdom. A person ignores red flags, excuses harmful behavior, and tolerates things they normally would never accept because they are afraid of losing someone they love. But Allah sees beyond emotions. He sees reality fully. He sees conversations you never heard, intentions you never noticed, and outcomes you could never predict. Human beings judge based on appearances and feelings, but Allah's knowledge is complete. This is why believers must trust Him even when an ending breaks their heart. There are also relationships that slowly pull people away from Allah without them realizing it. A person may become so emotionally consumed that they neglect prayer, lose focus spiritually, and become attached to pleasing another human being more than pleasing Allah. Their emotional dependency becomes unhealthy. They begin sacrificing their values, peace, and even faith just to hold on to someone. And because Allah loves His servants, He may remove what is spiritually harming them even. Cry while losing it. This is one of the hardest forms of mercy to understand because human beings often mistake comfort for goodness. Just because something feels good emotionally does not always mean it is good for the soul. Sometimes Allah closes a door because He knows staying attached to that person would eventually destroy you emotionally. There are people who entered relationships believing they found happiness, but later experienced betrayal, toxicity, manipulation, or heartbreak far worse than the pain of separation itself. Allah protects in ways human beings do not always recognize immediately. And this is why believers should be careful not to judge situations too quickly. What hurts you today may actually save you tomorrow. The closed door you cried over may become the reason you are protected from years of pain later. Allah's wisdom stretches far beyond the limited understanding of human beings. There are moments when Allah removes someone from your life because He wants your heart to return to Him. Sometimes people become so attached to creation that they slowly forget the Creator. Their emotional world begins revolving entirely around another person. Their happiness depends on messages, attention, validation, and affection from someone else. But human beings are unstable by nature. People change. Feelings change. Situations change. Allah wants the believer's heart to remain connected to Him first, because only Allah remains constant forever. When a person builds their entire emotional world around another human being, they become vulnerable to complete emotional destruction if that person leaves. But when Allah is the center of the heart, even painful losses cannot fully destroy the believer. This does not mean believers never grieve or feel pain. Even the prophets experienced sadness and loss, but their connection with Allah gave them stability through those moments. They understood that this dunya is temporary and that not every separation is evil. One of the hardest realities about life is that some people are only meant to stay for a season. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to remain forever. Some people are lessons. Some teach you strength. Some expose your weaknesses. Some help you grow spiritually. And some are removed precisely because Allah knows their continued presence would harm your future. Many people only understand And this years later, at the time of heartbreak, they only see darkness and pain. But after healing, reflection, and growth, they begin seeing the wisdom behind the ending. They realize that losing certain people pushed them closer to Allah, strengthened their character, and protected them from becoming emotionally or spiritually lost. There are also moments when Allah removes people because He is preparing you for a better future you cannot yet see. Human beings often cling to what is familiar because they fear uncertainty. They would rather stay attached to unhealthy situations than face loneliness temporarily. But Allah may remove certain people to make room for healthier relationships, deeper growth, and greater peace. And sometimes the greatest mercy is not in what Allah gives, but in what He takes away. This is difficult for the human heart to accept because loss feels painful immediately. But believers must remember that Allah never removes something without wisdom. Even if the wisdom is hidden for years, it exists. The world today encourages people to chase emotional fulfillment above everything else. But Islam teaches balance. Love people, care deeply, build meaningful relationships, but never allow another human being to replace Allah in your heart, because no person can carry the weight of your soul the way Allah can. Many people suffer deeply because they confuse attachment with love. Real love should bring peace, respect, growth, and closeness to Allah. But unhealthy attachment creates fear, obsession, emotional dependence, and constant anxiety. A person becomes terrified of losing someone because their entire happiness is built around them. They begin neglecting themselves spiritually and emotionally just to keep the relationship alive. This type of attachment can slowly drain the soul. And sometimes Allah removes a person simply because He knows you deserve better than what you are settling for. Human beings often lower their standards emotionally because they fear loneliness. They tolerate disrespect, emotional inconsistency, dishonesty, and even spiritual harm because they cannot imagine life without that person. But Allah sees your worth even when you do not see it yourself. There are people who begged Allah to keep someone in their life, only to later realize that if Allah had answered the dua exactly the way they wanted, it would have. 4 years of pain and regret. This is why believers must trust Allah's wisdom more than their emotions. Emotions change quickly, but Allah's knowledge never fails. One of the most beautiful things about healing after loss is that it often brings a person back to themselves. During unhealthy relationships or emotional attachments, people sometimes lose parts of who they are. Their peace disappears. Their confidence weakens. Their connection with Allah suffers. But after separation and healing, they slowly rediscover themselves again. They begin rebuilding their heart with Allah at the center instead of another human being. Heartbreak also teaches people powerful lessons about dunya. It reminds them that nothing here is guaranteed forever. No relationship, no friendship, no situation remains unchanged permanently. This world was created to be temporary. The believer learns not to place absolute dependence on temporary things because only Allah is eternal. And one of the hidden blessings of painful endings is that they teach emotional maturity. A person becomes wiser, more reflective, more careful about who they allow close to their heart. They begin understanding the importance. When you oughtn't of protecting their peace, faith, and emotional well-being, sometimes Allah removes people because their presence was blocking your spiritual growth. Certain relationships keep a person stuck emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. The person cannot move forward because they are too attached to what is comfortable, even if it is unhealthy. Allah may close that chapter because He wants you to grow into someone stronger, wiser, and closer to Him. There are people who became more sincere in prayer after heartbreak than they had ever been before. Their tears in sujood became real. Their dua became deeper. Their dependence on Allah became stronger. The pain that nearly broke them emotionally ended up strengthening them spiritually. And this is why believers should never think Allah abandons them through loss. Sometimes Allah is actually protecting them in ways they cannot yet understand. Sometimes He is removing distractions from their life. Sometimes He is teaching them not to depend too heavily on people. Sometimes He is redirecting them towards something healthier and more peaceful. Healing takes time. Some wounds do not disappear overnight. Certain memories remain painful for a while. There may still be moments of sadness, loneliness, or longing. But with time, sincerity, and closeness to Allah, the heart begins understanding that not every goodbye was meant to harm you. Some goodbyes were written to rescue you from future pain. Some endings were written to protect your faith. Some separations were written because Allah saw tears and damage ahead that you could not yet see. And some people were removed because your soul deserved peace more than temporary attachment. Because perhaps the person you lost was never truly taken away to destroy your heart. Perhaps Allah removed them to save your future, protect your faith, heal your soul, and teach you that no human being was ever meant to hold the place in your heart that belongs to Allah alone. If this message touched your heart, subscribe for updates and hopeful messages.